my name is John Wilcox, and this is Redeeming the Fathers of America. What if, as a parent, you wanted to help your son or daughter acquire specific skills that they could follow in your footsteps? And what if you invested considerable time and wealth in the training of that child and then watched them change direction? In addition, after completing their studies, they turned to you and said, "Dad, I don't want to walk in your shoes." What would you do? Is this what happened in the life of Thomas Lynch Sr.? Thomas Lynch Jr., who is the subject of this presentation, was born on August 5, 1749 at Prince George's Parish in the province of South Carolina. His family genealogy has been traced back to the 12th century Ireland and beyond that when they immigrated from Austria. His great-grandfather, Jonac Lynch, immigrated to the colonies about 1690 and settled in what would become the colony of South Carolina. It was here that he died, leaving his son, Thomas Lynch I, with a meager inheritance. During the 1730s and 40s, Thomas Lynch I invested heavily in land and soon established 6 separate plantations along the fertile banks which bordered the Santee and Wanton rivers. The native soil along these rivers provided a princely fortune through the cultivation of rice. It was his son, Thomas Lynch Sr., that carried on the family legacy for today's founding father, Thomas Lynch Jr. He did so by investing heavily in his education in hopes of securing him a worthy future. Young Thomas began his training at Indigo Society School, a very successful institution in Georgetown, South Carolina. Prior to his 13th birthday and the completion of his studies there, his father moved Thomas to England, where he attended Eton College and received considerable advantages over his peers being educated in the colonies. Thomas then entered the University of Cambridge and received degrees related to his study of law. According to Reverend Charles A. Goodrich, when Thomas graduated, his father was told that he had sustained a high reputation both in respect to his classical attainments and for the virtues which adorned his character. These complimentary words so pleased his father that he encouraged Thomas to continue his education abroad for some additional years. So it was that Thomas Lynch Jr. entered the prestigious Temple, where he applied himself diligently and with a characteristic zeal to the philosophy of jurisprudence and to the principles of the British Constitution. In approximately 1772, after several years abroad, Thomas Lynch Jr. returned to South Carolina. History records his manners were that of an eminently accomplished man, graceful and dignified, and with his mind enriched with abundant stores of knowledge. One can almost feel his father's emotion when he deems the sacrifice of his son's education a just reward, as he witnessed him being accepted into the hearts of South Carolina society. But here is where a father's mettle is truly tested. Although Lynch Jr. was more than qualified to enter the profession of law, he approached his father with a different purpose. It was during this discussion that young Thomas shifted his interests to the life of a farmer. Thomas Lynch Jr. married his childhood sweetheart, Elizabeth Shubrick, on May 14, 1772, and settled at Peachtree Plantation, about 4 miles south of Hopsewee. The residence was a gracious gift from Thomas's father, who by this time had become an impassioned supporter of the Revolution. It was at Peachtree that Lynch Jr. took great care in the cultivation of the plantation. However, it was also here that Thomas's destiny would take shape as he began to listen to the grievances of his fellow colonists. His father, Thomas Lynch Sr., served on the Stamp Act Congress of 1765, which respectfully addressed 13 specific grievances in regard to essential rights and liberties the colonies were suffering at the hand of British rule. In 1774, Thomas Lynch Sr. was elected to the First Continental Congress. He was highly esteemed by his fellow patriots and was appointed, along with Benjamin Franklin and Colonel Benjamin Harrison, as advisors to General George Washington. As a result of his father's influence in serving the colony, Thomas Lynch Jr. was elevated to service in many important civil offices. It was 1775, on the raising of the 1st South Carolina Regiment of Provincial Regulars, that Thomas Lynch Jr. was appointed to command a company. Having received his commission, he soon enlisted his quota of volunteers and began the march for Charleston. Unfortunately, during the march, Thomas came down with a violent bilious fever, which weakened his constitution and from which he would never fully recover. As his strength began to return, he joined his regiment, only to suffer weakness, whereupon he was unable to fully perform the duties of his station according to his desires. The afflictions of the fever notwithstanding, Thomas received word that his father had suffered from a dangerous illness while attending his place at Congress in Philadelphia. He hastened to his dying father in hopes of administering the comfort and support of an affectionate son. To his surprise, his application for a furlough for this purpose was denied by commanding officer Colonel Gadsden. This disappointment, however, and the controversy which grew out of this refusal were soon reversed by his election to Congress, where he was appointed to succeed his father. He now lost no time in departing for Philadelphia. Upon his arrival in Philadelphia, Thomas Jr. found his father recovered to the degree where they could make plans to return home. However, with the burden of caring for his father's health, Thomas Jr. began to suffer himself, when his health turned with an alarming swiftness. Even so, he continued to serve in Congress until the Declaration of Independence had been voted upon and his signature affixed to that important document. A space was left between Edward Rutledge and Thomas Hayward Jr. for his father's signature. But due to the elder Lynch's health, Thomas Jr. and his father were denied the distinction of being the only father and son team to serve the Continental Congress. When their work was completed, the two set out from Philadelphia for their home, but his father lived only to reach Annapolis, where a second paralyzing attack terminated his valuable life. With the pain and suffering of this event, Thomas Jr. pressed toward Carolina, only to find his own health diminishing and giving him reason to doubt how long he would survive. His physician and friends recommended a change of climate as the only hope for his recovery. In light of Thomas's involvement in the colonial fight for freedom, his departure to that more favorable climate would be eminently hazardous and likely expose him to capture. A vessel was found destined for St. Eustatia in the Caribbean. Accompanied by his most affectionate wife, Thomas Lynch Jr., now 30 years of age, proceeded to board ship and set sail on an indirect route to the south of France. From the time of their departure, nothing more is known of their fate. Various rumors and speculations circulated concerning the ship in which they sailed, but their friends, after months of cruel suspense, embraced the painful conclusion that this worthy pair found a watery grave during some tempest. Although the life of Thomas Lynch Jr. was terminated at an early age, he had lived to render eminent services to his country and to establish his character as a man of exalted views and exalted moral worth. Few men possessed more absolute control over the passions of the heart or revealed a greatness of virtue. That a man of such excellence, such ability, character, and integrity, with a solid devotion to patriotism, should be snatched from the further benefit of his fellow man is indeed a mystery that only our Creator can judge. For the duration of His kind service offered to secure our freedoms, we are eternally grateful. Thank you for watching Redeeming the Fathers of America.